Okay, we are going to now understand how personality is assessed. There are three methods for this: self-report, inventory, and projective techniques. Self-report is the subject themselves will share what personality traits they have. So we don't really have much information about that in our textbook. Moving on to the inventory, these are a set of questions about the person's life history. They are presented in a certain way and scored in a certain way. They are scored with the standard scoring key. Uh, One example of that is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, the MMPI. We are going to learn about that more in detail, in the further pages. Then techniques. Projective techniques are those. It's a system where it evokes certain responses in the subjects. The subject themselves will act out their unconscious desires, urges, and motivations, and this also this is done through creating imaginary characters and their actions as the subject's responses. So there will be imaginary characters made, and the subject has to say what will this person do and all. Okay, so there are two types of projective techniques. The Rorschach ink blot test, it's pronounced as Rorschach. Then thematic perception test. Then there is also behavioral analysis. Sorry, I didn't mention that. There is behavioral analysis. Okay, then okay, moving on. So the MMPI. This was a personality test developed by Stark Hathaway and J.C. McKinley. You have to remember this. Stark Hathaway and J.C. McKinley. Then test description. There are actually two versions of MMPI, but we are going to only learn about the first version. So the first version consisted of 550 items printed on separate cards. So if there are 550 questions, and the subject must answer true, false, or cannot say. It takes around 2 hours to complete. The subject must be 18 or older. This test measures the 10 clinical areas of personality. Important areas which determine one's personality. These are measured by 10 scales pertaining to the 10 clinical areas. So the 10 clinical areas of personality are, this we just have to learn in brief. Okay, then hypochondriasis. This is excessive concern with bodily or somatic sensations. Like people who obsessively Google their symptoms and fear that they have a very dangerous disease. That is called hypochondriasis. Hypochondriacal, they say. This is the exact term for it. Then depression, pessimistic, hopeless, and slow actions. Then hysteria. It's an unconscious means for escaping from emotional problems. Okay, this is not consciously done, it's unconscious. So physical symptoms like vomiting, blindness, and paralysis are present without any physiological reasons, per se, like any disease. Then psychopathic deviate, it's a disregard for social rules, and then they have shallow emotions. So people who are psychopaths, they have these. Then masculinity and femininity, how rigidly a person conforms to stereotypical masculine and feminine roles. So there are stereotypical roles of what each gender should do, and how rigidly people conform to that. Like people say that women must be in the kitchen within the four walls, and it's about how much the person conforms to rules like that. Then paranoia, low level of trust, suspicions, delusions. Then psychasthenia. These are all the symptoms which are present during exams, like worry, anxiety, tension, doubts, and then indecisiveness, obsession, obsessiveness, compulsive behavior. Then schizophrenia. We're going to learn about this disorder later on in another chapter. Now, in schizophrenia, odd thinking is present. Social alienation. Schizophrenics, socially alienate themselves, they isolate themselves, and they also experience a lot of delusions and hallucinations. Then hypomania. It's a high level of excitability, flight of ideas, and overreactivity. So basically, hyperactive. Okay. Then social introversion. It is the complete opposite to hypomania. they are very shy, no interest in everyday activities, and they are very insecure. Okay, this is just brief, just you just need to have an idea. Then scales. So they've already tested all the clinical areas. Let's see how it is scaled and scored. So the question scale or the question mark that measures the number of questions that were left unanswered. Then K or correction scale measures defensiveness or guardiness. Like certain areas of their thinking they don't want to show it to the world, so they are very defensive and guarded. Then F or infrequency scale measures how much the person's answers deviate from the general population, how much they are different from the answers of other people. Then this is how it is scored. The raw score obtained by the testee after taking a test are converted to T scores. This formula is pretty important. T score is equal to raw score minus scale mean times 100 divided by scale of standard deviation plus 50. So just keep in mind this may be asked for like 2 marks. Yeah. So just keep it in mind. Criticism of this test. So as the person themselves are answering, there is no rechecking of is this true or not. So they may not always be true. Then certain responses mean different things to people. Okay, so it's very subjective. Then it shows cultural differences and racial disparity. So this is not culture fair. Then continuous revisions and standardization question the continuity of this test. So this is basically related to the second version of this. So it was constantly revised, so the second version was developed. So it is very confusing on the continuity. Then projective techniques. We've already spoken about this. Evoke responses from the subject, which stems from their unconscious urges and desires. As a result, they act out their inner fantasies. This is done by creating imaginary characters and their actions as responses to the test items. So this is widely used in mental hospitals. So because the subjects are incapable to answer themselves, and we've already discussed the criticisms of the inventory. So yeah, this is used. So there are two types, the Rorschach inkblot test and the thematic apperception test. So let's look at the Rorschach inkblot test. This was developed by Hermann Rorschach. Okay, that is important. So let's see the description. There are 10 ink blots printed on separate white cards. Ink blots means like the ink is just splattered around in a specific shape, in a white background. It has a white background. They are separate white cards. Then these ink blots are bilaterally symmetrical. So they are bilaterally symmetrical means on the left and on the right it is very similar because the paper is folded when the ink blot is made. Basic. Then the ink blots, the colors of the ink blots are 5 are black, 2 are black and red, and 3 are multicolored. And they don't really have a meaning, and though they don't really have a meaning intrinsically, the subject is made to infer something from it. Okay, so let's look at the administration. In a relaxed but controlled environment, the subject is given the cards one by one. They're asked to hold the card and they're asked to say whatever comes to their mind about what the ink blot resembles. They could take as much time as they want and could give as many responses as they want. Then the interpretation and scoring process. Interpretation is complex, needs training and practice. Okay, then because it's such a subjective test and it's like an art, so you have to be very careful. So the personality is not only based on these responses. They observe so much more, like how they behave initially, how the way they hold the card, the amount of time they take, the similarities with other responses and all of these are considered. Then scoring. Scoring is based on 4 categories: location, contents, originality and determinants. This has a lot of factual information. This may be asked for like like MCQ or something. So yeah, location, which part the testee focuses on. When you look at an ink blot, which part do they focus on? Do they focus on the white part, on the actual ink blot? So yeah, uppercase W means it's seen as a whole, the ink blot is seen as a whole. Lowercase W means it is not seen as a whole. Uppercase D focuses on major details, and then lowercase d focuses on minor details, and S is a response to white regions. Then contents, what their answer contains. If it includes human forms, it is shown by H. Human details, HD. Animal forms, A. Animal details, F, AD. Sorry, it's not AF, it's AD. Then we have N, natural things like rivers, the sun and all. Then inanimate objects shown by O. And then originality, how original their answer is. P means popular response, and O means original or unique response. Then the determinants, how the ink blot is perceived, the form of the blot, the color of the blot. Do they perceive any movement? Though it is pretty stable, they may infer movement. So that is shown by M. You just have to remember the letters. And then K shows shading of the blot. Okay, now interpretation. If the number of W's, uppercase W's, which show that it is perceived as a whole, the ink blot is perceived as a whole, if they exceed the capital and the small d, the person is known to be intelligent. Okay, so they are able to look at everything as a whole. They are able to synthesize. Then if there are more C's than M, more colors than the perceived movement, they are an extrovert. If more movement than M than K, which is shading, they are an introvert. So more shading responses show that the person is anxious, depressed, and has an inferiority complex. More perceived movement means they are more imaginative. Now moving on to the thematic apperception test. This was developed by C.D. Morgan and H.A. Murray. Description. So the test contains 31 cards. Okay. In that 30 of them represent various scenes involving human characters, and one of them is left blank. So the cards are organized into different sets. One set is for boys, one set is for girls, one is over females over 14, one is for males over 14, and one is for both boys and girls. So it's made that one subject has no more than 20 cards. Okay, they have 20 cards, and this is conducted in 2 sessions with 10 cards each. So the picture, the card shows vague situations, very vague situations. It doesn't really have a particular meaning, but you can infer a lot from it, as it involves human characters. So this is a storytelling test. So the subject is made to answer what exactly is happening in the scene. They are asked to construct a story around the scene, just with that scene. So administration, the subject is told that the test assesses creativity and there are no right or wrong answers, which is true, and there is no time limit. They're not really told that you should answer within like 5 minutes, but then they're not given a lot of time to think. They just move on to the next card, so they don't really have a lot of time to think. So as they don't have a lot of time to think, they don't change their answers based on societal expectations. They just project their unconscious urges and desires. And then, so the subject has to make a story regarding what is happening now, what has happened before, and what will happen in the future. And as the human characters, they also have to mention how the characters are feeling and thinking. Then scoring and interpretation. This is pretty important. The hero of the story shows the subject's personality type. The theme of the story signifies the theme, obviously. Then style is the language used and quality of expression, then creativity and originality. Then content of the story. It reveals it reveals the inner interest, sentiments, and the attitude held by the subject. These are all reflected in in their answers. Then test situation as a whole. The As I said before, only the responses are not taken into account. There's a lot more going on in this. The person's reaction to the test situation as a whole, like is he anxious or is he like having fun, being creative. So that is also taken into account. Then particular emphasis or omissions, things that have been omitted, added, distorted and paid attention to are considered. Then attitudes towards sex and authority are also considered. Outcome, is it a happy ending or a sad ending? Then on the whole, the recurring themes and features are paid more attention to than the specific details. Like if they give one similar, one answer separately, like without context to the other answers, that is not really taken into account. But then recurring themes like racism, racial superiority, if it is repeated again and again, that is counted. Then behavioral analysis, this is a separate one. This is also used to measure personality. So this can be done in different ways: interview, observation, nomination, behavioral rating and situational tests. In interview, the individual is assessed through answers to specific questions. Okay, this occurs mostly in corporate situations, and to get application to a college, admission in a college, to work somewhere, and then so there are two kinds of questions asked. One is structured and one is unstructured. Structured are a specific set of questions involving a specific protocol. It is asked in a specific way, and they are very objective. They have a factual right or wrong answer, and rating scales are also used in this. Then we come to the unstructured questions. These are very open-ended questions. Open-ended means there is no right or wrong answer. Their quality of answers is measured here. Then observation. This is very often used to understand a person. They are observed with their family members or close people. But then the problem with this is that this should be done by professionals only, because the answers can really be misinterpreted, and their behavior, a lot of details goes missed out if it's not done by a professional. And also another problem is that when the psychologist is observing this person talking to their family members, the subject may not always behave spontaneously or how they always behave. They may modify their behavior, because the psychologist is watching. So the data would be invalid and not really useful. Then nomination. This is a process of peer assessment. It is used among people who have known each other for a long time. So this other person is asked. This person is asked to nominate one or more people of the group who they would like to study with or work with, and they should give reasons. They should give reasons of why they chose only that person among all of these people. But then this can also be affected by personal bias. Behavioral rating. People who've known each other for a long time again rate their behavior on some category or description. But this also has a lot of problems. There are three criticisms. Firstly, the description, the category can confuse the rater. Okay, that. Then there is also the halo effect. Halo effect is where one person assesses another person's overall personality based on liking or disliking their one particular trait. So for example, a boss may rate an employee's performance as very low because they're not submitting their work on time. But then the halo effect occurs when they also rate the quality of work as very low, because they don't like them being late. They also think of them as bad overall, and which results in them rating their quality of work as low. Then there's middle category bias and extreme category bias. So some people, when they rate, some people choose to always rate in the middle scales. So that is middle category bias. And extreme category bias is they avoid the middle scales completely and then just choose an extreme answer. So that is also bias. So in view of all these criticisms, the raters are given training to overcome these challenges. So this makes it a bit better. Then finally we come to the situational test. This involves role play, okay, to understand how the person behaves in certain situations. But these are mostly stressful situations. They create realistic situations. These can be realistic or simultaneous situations through video play. Here, the individual is asked to complete a task along with a group. But then the group members are basically trained, they are asked to be uncooperative and interfering and disturbing. They are not asked to, cooperate with the subject, and it assesses the way the subject behaves in this situation. The individual is observed carefully, and the subject is also asked to give a verbal report on how they felt during the test. So this is called situational stress test. Okay, that's it. These are all the methods how personality is assessed. So hope you understood something.